We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the MTW podcast. I'm not sure how many we've done so far, but this is new. For the first time, we are doing a television show review, which where the team would come in, obviously enough. We've done the top 10 movies. We've had my friend Rick Beckes come in. Marvin and I have discussed the Royal Rumble. And as we get closer to WrestleMania, we'll discuss that too. We've talked about the Oscar predictions, the Oscar show. That actually went over pretty well, so thank you guys again. Watching a couple of TV shows right now. I'm watching Shameless. Episodes just wrapped up. And, Marv, you don't watch episodes, right?
No, I do not.
Okay, alright. Well, the show's actually pretty funny. The show just wrapped up its 4th season last night. It's Matt LeBlanc basically plays himself, and it kind of takes really funny jabs at like the more ridiculous side of Hollywood in terms of getting TV shows made. The show airs on Showtime. They have a weird like episode structure. Like they only do 9 shows a year, but I think the 2 British comedians are pretty good. The wife kind of gets on my nerves, but everyone else surrounding it's actually pretty funny. Pretty sure we'll get back for a 5th season, but season 4 just wrapped. So if you watch that, I would recommend this season's pretty good because that show's actually really funny. Shameless I'm watching right now. Shameless has about 3 more episodes left. So I'll review Shameless. Girls has 1 more episode left.
They have 1 more episode, and yeah, if besides Girls, people should be watching or should have been watching The Jinx on HBO. It's pretty fascinating and interesting.
So you guys should definitely watch those. Shameless. Shameless is almost done. Girls is almost done. And as we get to the spring, this is the last time I'm going to be able to say this. The past couple of years, I've actually had a really awesome spring lineup with Mad Men and Game of Thrones. So those have been like 2 of my favorite shows for a while. And Mad Men has been on for a really long time now. Since 2007, actually, and I guess this is still technically their 7th season, but it's like 7B. But this is like the 8th premiere, basically. It's basically like their 8th season. So shows have started after Mad Men and ended before Mad Men. Example, Breaking Bad is one of them. But this is the last 7 episodes of Mad Men, so I cannot wait to see how that show ends. I expect very emotionally driven stuff towards the end of there, and I'm really looking forward to see how very poetic show. I'm curious to see how such a poetic show like Mad Men gets has closure. So I'm looking forward to that. Mad Men is back April 5th, Easter Sunday,
and do expect a review for Mad Men.
Yeah, we'll do exactly, and probably the new main event show right now, April 12th. All you people know it already. Season 5, Game of Thrones. I don't know what else to expect because a show like that makes you feel like you've seen everything, and then they continue to slap you in the face with a vicious curveball. So I don't know who they plan to get rid of next. The whole foundation of the show has been really shaken after the 4th season. Especially over in King's Landing, and even in the North. So I'm really curious to see how they bounce off that. So a lot of good TV shows are coming up, and which now brings us to our main review, House of Cards Season 3, which was added on Netflix around about 2 weeks ago, February 27th. When they added it on Netflix. I just watched the whole thing last week. So now me and Marvin are going to give our thoughts. For those of you who don't know the show, Kevin Spacey plays Frank Underwood as he climbs his way up the political ladder of Washington, D.C. through very, morally and physically harmful tactics, to say the least. And I don't want to give too much away. When that show started, he was a whip? What was this?
He was a minority whip.
He was a minority whip. This is back in season 1, and then and it follows the British show The House of Cards, which is on Netflix, and that only has 3 seasons. And going into the 3rd season of House of Cards, I thought they might do a similar thing because I never know how long a guy like Kevin Spacey is going to commit to that show. Robin Wright, for that matter, because we've seen people on House of Cards that have skyrocketed after they've been eliminated from the proceedings. Corey Stoll's everywhere now. He's acting in a lot of movies. Kate Mara, who was in the Fantastic Four this summer. And then a couple other people. And just a lot of great actors on that show, too. I think Michael Kelly, who's Doug Stanhope. I think he might be my favorite actor on the show now.
I'm butchering the name. The guy who plays Remy Dalton, Marshala Ali.
Yes, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, if you guys don't, you guys recognize him when you see him. He was in Place Beyond the Pines. He played the stepfather to actor slipping my name, but he was in that movie.
Eva Longoria. Not Longoria. Eva Mendes was the wife.
Was the wife of
and the stepfather of Ryan Gosling's
and James Doohan. He was the stepfather of James Doohan, and he's amazing. He's an amazing actor. Molly Park, who plays Jackie Sharp.
Okay.
Yeah, the show is filled with a great cast. Very, very eclectic and great cast. So that's been very consistent of the show.
Yeah, and going into the third season here, and this we're gonna have to, if you watch the show, we're gonna have to go into some spoilers, just so many things, just what happened in the past, but you should be able to still follow on because we're gonna go pretty in depth this season.
I mean, if you guys haven't watched the show already,
I wouldn't. I think you should watch this after you've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't feel bad about spoilers because if you haven't watched the show already, I mean, that means you have a life.
Most of the hardcore fans have seen it already, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, people binge watch it. People be binge watching it the whole weekend when it first comes out.
Yeah, it took us 2 weeks to watch the show. People finished the season in a weekend.
I think it took me. I think I was done with the show in about 9 days because I remember we watched the first episode the first day.
Yeah.
The first day it came out, we actually watched episode 1 of season 3, and and kind of went on from there. But yeah, on average, it usually takes me about 2 weeks because you got to think that's it. That's all the House of Cards you're gonna get that whole year. So why blow it in a weekend? I don't know. And I remember last year you said you actually watched it over the course of 3 actual months.
Yeah, because I was working a lot last year, and even this in season 3 we were doing a lot of gigs when it came out, so we couldn't binge watch it that weekend because I think we were both booked for something.
Yes, I believe you're right. I think you're right. So that's pretty much it. So going into season 3, Frank Underwood is the official president of the United States. He is now the leader of the free world. He stepped into the presidency at the end of season 2. As also at the end of the first really big reveal going into season 3 is that Doug Stampa is in fact alive, because at the end of season 2, after the confrontation with Rachel, he gets hit in the head with a brick. And at the end of season 2, we are for certainly left to believe that he was out of the equation and that he was dead. But we opened up to season 3, and and he's in the hospital, and it's everything's kind of blurry to him. So I was just I was genuinely surprised that he was actually alive and they kept him on.
Yeah, I thought it was great at the end of season 2 that they left his fate ambiguous. It was great. It was great using that to open season 3. One of the other big things they used to open season 3 was Frank's new bill, American Works, which sets up the tone for season 3 and what is his most explicit motivations are for this season. Mm-hmm. So it was great. It was great. It was a great opener. The show tonally was even more dark than it has been in its prior seasons.
It was a lot more it felt a lot more darker and more personal.
Yeah,
on a more personal level too. You got sense of regret. You have sense of you start to see a slight sense of remorse. This season has a lot of active desperation. What stone won't be left unturned, so to speak. And so I really dug that. And now Frank this was a tough season for Frank Underwood, man. He had the America Works. He had to do like a ton of crazy stuff to get America Works funded. He starts having problems with Claire. They start having personal problems there because what's going on with Claire is that she's worried about Frank's position in power, and she's trying to go after the UN. She wants to be the ambassador to the UN.
Yeah, so her rationale for going for that position is to gain experience. So they feel that Frank's position is quite precarious, and she feels like, well, for me to run for president, I should have legitimate experience. And she convinces Frank to appoint her as United Nations ambassador, which in itself was a very arduous process, and it led to more problems, which came full circle later in season 3, which we'll get to later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually I'm glad you brought that up because we start off the gate. I want to say this was the second episode. We have a big Frank is already faced with a big problem in that the Democratic Party doesn't want him to run for president in 2016, and he's just on the verge of getting this new program started. So already off the bat, he doesn't have the support of the leadership, and the election is only 18 months away. So he would have it would be impossible for him to even start a campaign. There's actually an episode of him. There's a moment there's a moment early on, the same episode he finds out that he's not going to get the leadership support. He's on the phone, calling countless companies, representatives trying to get funding as hard as he can. It's really one of the few times now that this a bump in the road was quite a big one, and Frank really got nailed back a bit emotionally once he lost the leadership.
Yeah, and this arc is really interesting because you actually see Frank Underwood be really vulnerable, and it's weird. This season, like you said earlier, Evan, that it's really intimate. It's a really intimate season. We actually see the Underwoods and how they really interact with each other, and we understand the dynamic way more. And this arc, you see that we never seen them be intimate with one another. Mm-hmm. The closest thing of intimacy we've seen in prior seasons is that they share a cigarette.
Yeah, which
is a motif of what they're planning, but you actually see them have sex in this season.
And that kind of blew me away because that's really their relationship. Has always been very strange. They knew that they loved each other, but it was demonstrated last year that Frank is pretty much homosexual, and they really
Well, he's bisexual. He's
bisexual, but Frank he has desires. He has shown desires for men, and it was demonstrated last year with Meacham, how they got Meacham into the fold, and they really kind of hit it, and they pull even more so this year.
Well, last season they expressed his sexual orientations also when he at his time in the Sentinel, mm-hmm. in that military school, and and we'll get to more of how his sexual taste, so to speak, is
really tested.
Aimed at it's tested and aimed at a very personal character that gets in the inner circle, so to speak, to the Underwoods.
Okay, yeah, and it's this is like a 13 episode season. It's almost there's almost so much to get to. So we'll start talking about some other characters. Jackie Sharp is approached by the president, and he wants her on. Frank is going to try and do some elaborate way to get him to get himself in the running, and he starts to approach Jackie Sharp for possible vice presidency on the ticket. And Jackie's morals have really been tested here this season. We seem like a lot more flaws, and we have someone who had such a really unique feminine stance in the show when she was introduced last year. It's almost like, and she's really been tested with how her femininity or sort of independence is sort of seen as. So what'd you think of Jackie's how Jackie's character went this year?
Well, her character was really fleshed out a lot more because she was pretty much forced to. She was being like explicitly used for Frank, to take the woman's vote.
Mm-hmm.
But her morals are tested when Frank, delegates to her that, like, hey, you're gonna have to, say things that you clearly don't believe in, like, call a presidential candidate a sexist when she's clearly not, or attack like a presidential candidate's children, and like we're like we really see like how conflicted she is and what and we especially see this in the debates with the character of Heather Dunbar, which is Frank has two major adversaries in the season, and one of them is Heather Dunbar.
Yeah.
And when you see Heather Dunbar, she is like she's the white horse.
Heather Dunbar's character, she was the one last year that interrogated the president with that whole matter in China, and it was her interrogations that led to the former president before Underwood to resign. So she's had like a really, she's really rocked a lot of things in the show, and she has a strict stance by the Constitution that's really seen as refreshing, especially during this recent time of Underwood, who's been kind of seen as a tyrant, who's really run America under a state of tyranny. Another character that's introduced is Thomas Yates, and Thomas Yates is played by Paul Sparks, who was in Boardwalk Empire.
Fantastic.
I absolutely love that actor. He was Mickey Boyle in Boardwalk Empire. So for those of you who watch the show, you know the character. He pretty much became like the man in charge of Nucky's bootlegging operation. Here in House of Cards, he is an author, and Frank is investigating him. Excuse me. He's
Frank solicits him to write a autobiography to get America Works passed.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a piece of propaganda to sway public opinion of that bill.
And one thing I liked that and that's basically that's what Thomas Yates is. That's what the Thomas Yates character is used for. And then as time goes by, he actually gets closer with the Underwoods on a more personal level, and he sees that there's a bigger book to be made here. So Thomas Yates is really this kind of character from a completely different world, and he's really one of the first characters in the history of the show to really see the Underwood at their most tender.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so I actually loved how that was positioned. Now, one thing this America Works thing now. So now we're gonna have to get to the more meaty part. This is the more meaty, bureaucratic parts of the show. America Works is a program to get millions of people, basically to get millions of people's jobs. And what do you think of that segment? I think in the premiere when Stephen Colbert really ripped into the president on TV, and he made the America Works cracking.
That segment was meant to show you how.
Because it was harder on him than he was on his actual show. Yeah, he was.
Well, that's the thing. Like Stephen Colbert and the person outside Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, when political figures are on, they compared to say like quote unquote real news journalists. They are very direct and candid with their guest, especially their guest that has political affiliations. But with this, I felt like it was a realistic depiction of how Stephen Colbert would be with a persona like Frank Underwood, but at the same time was kind of far-fetched because if Stephen Colbert, it was great seeing how politicians do acquire people in pop culture to help, fertilize their, the agendas and stuff like that. So, to me, in my personal opinion, my observation, it felt kind of, it didn't feel like how that would play out in real life.
Yeah.
Like, President Obama would not...
He wouldn't even stand for that, yeah.
He wouldn't stand for that. He'll be way more diplomatic and have the interview go into his favor.
And it also showed that Frank, and Frank doesn't have a lot of control. It's almost like he has it's like he has no control. Like it's almost like he doesn't see people from a humanistic way.
Well, that's always been established in the show, but this season, you see that when he's trying to pass M-Works, that he appropriates money. He takes away money from major, organizations like FEMA. Mm-hmm. He takes several $1 billion to fund fund that bill. It shows you how much. It shows you, how ruthless he is to establish a legacy, because that's what he wants. Like he says that in the season. It's like he tells at the Claire, like, hey man, we did all these things that we've done to gain the White House, but ultimately to establish a legacy. And that's the motivation and the goal of all political figures.
Yes,
absolutely.
Now and going back to Claire now, she's been really struggling. Like she gets hit hard early because she's actually denied. She's denied the nomination early on by Mendoza. I think it was the senator. So, and she's really exposed to someone who doesn't really have that much political experience. We see her try to handle these foreign affairs on her own, and a lot of times it doesn't really it didn't work out for a lot of times. And probably the biggest bump in Claire's road was how that whole
before you go, we should introduce because we talked about one adversary that Frank Underwood has, but the main adversary is Victor Petrov.
Victor Petrov, who was brilliant played. Yes, okay.
He's depicted as a Russian president who's uncanny. It's kind of interesting how similar he is to real life Russian president Vladimir Putin. so the creator of the creators of House of Cards, they did a good job at doing political satire with Russian relations and geopolitics.
And they've always been relevant. Who are the most recent adversaries under or just who have been the most recent reported conflicts on the news. It's been stuff with Russia and it's been stuff stuff going on in the Middle East still. And I thought the actor who played him was great. I loved him. I thought he was so. I thought he had this great smooth. That was very smooth. I thought he had a lot of charisma, and he actually showed signs of vulnerability as well, and even signs of paranoia, and rightfully so because he was kind of publicly humiliated a couple of times. So that's and what he kind of wants out of Frank, if I can remember correctly, is that
which is played by
he wants has to do with the Jordan Valley. He needs troops out of there.
Yeah, and one thing about House of Cards is there's a lot of subplots. There's a lot of plot in general.
Yes, it's a very dense show. It's hard to really cover a show like this. Too.
Yeah, even right now, even as we're going over, we're going back and we're oscillating between stuff that happens in the beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season, going back to the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's impossible to give a full linear structure every single episode. We're just trying to give our thoughts, and we're just trying our hardest to structure it out here. So yeah, but I did and I thought that really showed. His character really did. I liked how his presence even further the rift between Frank and Claire.
Yeah, because I mean, those who watch the show, me and Evan, we thought when they needed to get this deal established to use this quote unquote peace resolution in the Jordan Valley, I thought anyway that Frank was going to have Claire essentially have sex with Victor Petrov, to get this passed. That was the subtext of you felt that,
especially with that kiss during the party.
Yes, it was boundaries are being pushed.
Blatant boundaries are being pushed, and even how we even the scene where he ashes the cigar on like in the White House, like the boiler room of the White House, like how that mark is there,
Yeah.
and how that's referenced back later on too. Just like it just shows you how much that presence has been rocked. So I did like President Petrov here. So those have been the two big Frank adversaries, and another person that gets and another incident early on that kind of gets Frank rattled is the drone strike.
Oh yes, yes.
Because the drone strike caused several people, people were injured, people were killed, and which actually, and it was that drone strike which led into the hearing about the the Senate hearing about the drone strike, which is when we see Heather Dunbar back for this time, and it also leads into another issue that Frank has, is that somebody on the Supreme Court is suffering from Alzheimer's.
Yes, and it leads Frank to have to pick a nomination.
Yeah, all kind of building from this drone strike. Oh, yeah, from this drone strike thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of branching off.
It was a good depiction on how drone strikes are. It's kind of a legal gray area and a ethical gray area too. Mm-hmm. But
and I know Homeland did this earlier. They did this on Homeland.
Yeah, because drones in combat it's just a very gray thing. It's no accountability. Legality is not really. It's not enough legal foundation to hold anyone accountable with drone strikes. But in the context of House of Cards, you see how this sets bricks for Heather Dunbar's, played by I believe Elizabeth Marvel. She's fantastic. Yes. But like it shows you how it shows you how Frank will manipulate people, especially when people have with the Supreme Court justice, he suffered from Alzheimer's, and Frank manipulates him into staying on.
First into staying on, and then
it bites him. It comes back to bite him.
It bites him in the butt because he probably should have done that in the first place. So it's almost like that thing. It's just like it's like Frank's sort of inner psychotic motions is starting to get the better of him here, because you had a chance to get rid of him, and now he wants to, and then he wanted to stay to
use the M-Works.
M-Works. M-Works, and then he thought this would actually be a really good idea to sidebar to get rid of Dunbar.
Yeah, well, later he figures out, well, I want Heather Dunbar to get the nomination, but you already knew that this would be Frank Underwood's plan to get off the nomination ticket for the Democratic Party. Okay. And she even admits that, hey, if it was any other time, I would have took it, but she feels so compelled to, she feels that Frank Underwood is a bad, part of American politics, and he needs to be taken down. So
and now how did you feel about the whole America Works thing, the M-Works thing, and with shutting down the FEMA funding and how
well the idea of M-Works is something that is actually based off reality. I mean, the crux of M-Works is to avoid entitlements. Yeah. And it's always been talked about for a while that, programs like Medicaid, Medicare, programs like, welfare, they're not going to last long, and they're taking money out of it's bankrupting the country. Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting that Kevin Spacey plays a Democratic president that is pushing what is ideally a conservative bill, a Republican bill. Mm-hmm. And he rationalizes this like, listen, these entitlements are not going to be here forever, and we want to get the American people jobs, because this is, and again, this is to establish legacy. Like, mm-hmm. He even talks about like, hey, not since the New Deal has a bill on this magnitude has been implemented. And M-Works, Frank the psyche of Frank Underwood, like as you talked about, is really interesting because he's a cutthroat person. He's self-serving, but if you really analyze it, like Amworks is a good build because he wants to put American people to work.
It actually shows how it actually starts to get over with some people.
Yes, it does. It does.
And even and with the American Works thing, it even helped resurrect the character of Freddy, who you saw in the Rib Shack. He lost the Rib Shack last year, and thanks to this American Works program, he was actually able to, work again. So it was actually through that program we actually got to see the reemergence of a character on a good side. So I kind of like that because I liked Freddy's presence there, and I felt bad that he kind of got really gluttoned at the end of last season. So now another side thing now is that going back to Doug Stampa. He's really trying to get back on the loyalty of the president's side, and he's been turning down jobs that have been paying more, and he's actually turning down like better positions, and he's even turning down a better personal life because he's been so loyal for the admiration of Frank, because he's been his main soldier from the beginning. And so I really loved the character depth this year of Doug Stampa because we got to meet his brother. We show him being comfortable with the family. So we see that there is some sort of good to him, but he's still buried underneath all these corrupt things, and he even goes as deep. He goes so deep as to try and get on Heather Dunbar's side to take down the Underwood, to take down the other Underwood campaign. So he's really been like this, internal mole, and he's also been working with Gavin, who's now the computer hacker who's now forced to be in the FBI and tracking down Rachel. And now tracking down Rachel has been like this whole season arc that actually has a chilling end, a really chilling end to that story arc, and we'll get to that later. So I thought Doug had they added 6 more layers to Doug's character this year.
Yeah, but all those layers are based off the foundation of obsession. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what House of Cards is really about, is about obsession, and it's how Doug Stamper is so obsessed to get in the graces of the Underwoods, and he looks at them as parents, as he looks at them as saviors. He talks about how he brings it up several times, but he brings it up again in this season how Frank Underwood helped him when he fell off the wagon with alcohol and drugs. And and he feels indebted to them, for that.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, and so I was much appreciative of that. Now going back to Claire. Now that we can get back to Claire here, she made a lot of weird decisions from Claire this year. She she really kind of she really seemed to go off the deep end at times, and her intentions were always a little cloudy. So Claire she kind of made things a little hard.
Yeah, she made things. She made things.
Is she getting a conscience? What?
Is she getting? Oh my God! Is she having human emotions?
Yeah, what's going on with Claire, man? I thought she was just as cold as Frank.
Well, that's the show started with them as depicting them as a partnership to climb the political ladder. With this season, it's starting to weigh on Claire more of the actions and the people that they crushed along their way to gaining the White House. And the first main instance of Claire's, rogue behavior, so to speak, is when she's giving a joint conference with the Russian president, Viktor Petrov, about a incarcerated activist, and it's found out that he killed himself, but they're trying to
the whole Michael Corrigan
Corrigan
story
arc, and they're trying to clean this up as a way as they were gonna release him, but Claire in mid speech says that I watched him die. he died believing for what he died in his beliefs, and essentially outing Viktor Petrov as a fraudulent president, and which led to the collapse of the deal in the Jordan Valley.
That Frank had killed himself trying. There must have been two different segments, like 2 different episodes. He was trying to work with the Jordan Valley, and they actually came across 2 different deals. So I was just like, ooh, like I almost felt mad. I was almost upset with Claire just because I was almost sucked into like this whole. It's like you really see Frank, letting his guard down and really, rolling up his sleeves and trying to get on Petrov's good side, and then in a second, Claire just knocks the whole thing down. It was like Jenga.
Yeah, it's like Jenga. Yeah. It's like narrative political Jenga. But when she did that, she gained the support of the people. She became the popular Underwood. She became more popular Underwood, which becomes an important facet when Frank is really running, because Claire's actually the most important piece when Frank runs for political office. It was always harkened on earlier in seasons that Claire is the affable one, the charismatic one out of the 2. You see this in real life. You see how the female counterparts from the male counterparts in the political sphere are the most sought after ones in terms of political public support. But it's really stressed and made emphatic in this season how much Frank needs Claire to be the popular Underwood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the more that Frank needs Claire for his personal gain, the more that tinkers with Claire's emotional being, emotional tact, and she just starts to shy away from that, and really it's the Paul Sparks character Thomas Shakes that really is slowly trying to. It's almost like he's like kind of like slowly trying to get a sense of how these people are like behind the curtain. And so I liked how we were able to see other people get a look at the Underwoods from a different perspective and from a real one, and yet they still have to force their guards even though they don't like each other. It's almost like they still have to sort of protect what they've built together even though they can't physically stand each other. And so I really thought that became really prevalent during the show, And so I think another thing I liked was just again the debate. Once they finally got to a debate, and that's almost when like that debate in the show showed everyone's kind of true colors with Jackie and with Frank and with Heather. So, like, what do you think of that debate scene?
I mean, like you said, true colors, but it showed you how much of a manipulator Frank really is, and it like with Jackie Sharp, she's completely undercut because she attacks a woman that she respects, and also.
And also remember, she's from she's a military background. And she's cut from like that cloth of like a code of honor, type thing,
And it's also should be mentioned that in the season, Jackie goes to Dunbar initially. It's like, listen, like I'll give you my delegates. I'll drop out. I'll
drop out and back you.
I'll endorse you. You'll win. You'll get the win. Like you'll win. And like
Dunbar, she does.
Yeah. Well. Initially, she turns her down.
Yeah,
but later,
initially she does turn her down. But at the end of it,
she switches sides. But at that point, the race is deadlocked. Mm-hmm. And the point is, Jackie, if Heather Dunbar accepted her offer early on, she would have won. She would have got the nomination in second.
Yeah, even sooner. So, another character. What do you think of Kim Dickens' character, Kate Baldwin?
Oh, God. Kim Dickens I love how David Fincher's influence is still touching House of Cards.
If you guys don't, because he directed the pilot.
He directed the first 2 episodes,
and he's an executive producer.
Yeah, he's a showrunner of the show. And Kim Dickens, if you guys don't remember, she played a detective in Gone Girl.
Yeah,
and she is incredible as a White House correspondent. Now she's brought on into the season because there was a White House correspondent that I forgot the actress's name. And I forgot the character's name.
I think the character's name was Ayala. Was the character?
Yeah, she was.
Well, she was on before, right?
She was on the first. She was on the second season.
Yeah.
And she's brought on. She's taken off because she attacks Frank Underwood's stance on.
I thought it was
on gay rights.
Gay rights.
On gay rights, and
and they shut her down.
They shut her down. They took off. And they brought in Kim Dickens, a way more. She's essentially Teflon. She's in the eyes of the journal of the reporter world. She's Teflon, meaning that you can't fire her. Unless she fires herself. And she is she's tough. She's tough, man.
And a sea of really hardened women, hardened female roles on that show.
Yeah.
That show really
Yeah, I love how the show depicts women. They depict women like people.
Actual true vicious, ball grabbing leaders at times.
Yeah, dude. They depict the women like actual people. They depict the women as multifaceted characters, as equal stances to the men in the show, and I love that. So. Yeah. I love how I love the character of Kim Dickens,
Yeah.
And her relationship with Thomas Yates, played by Paul Sparks.
Yeah. I thought and together they became they started to almost they were the words. They represented the media. It was those two represented the media. They represented outdoor media, and it was almost as if their closeness to the Underwoods. It's they represented the voice. It's almost they were just the outer voice again. These outside voices coming in on the Underwoods and really really look at them through a telescope.
And I also want to there's one sequence. Well, it wasn't a sequence. It was actually a device used to articulate on a very important episodes when the hurricane's coming, and the episode starts off with her writing an op-ed piece about Frank Underwood, and he's writing the first chapter of his novel, and he's very it's not conflicting. They're writing on the same plane but on the opposite sides.
Yes,
and the episode oscillates between how she's writing this op-ed piece and how he's writing his first chapter of the memoir. And they talk about how cutthroat the Underwoods are, but it's totally different. And I love the writing and editing of that segment, and it shows you how much Thomas Yates is a novelist. She's a reporter, and it shows you how much of their writing, despite being different mediums, is really serves the same purpose.
And I liked, and speaking of editing and with different story, different sort of storytelling mediums, I liked episode 7, which was the first one written by the creator, Bo Willimon, and it was the one where we actually see them renew their vows and how she gets her hair changed. And I liked how they kept chopping around when the actual story takes place. They showed, it was really the first time that show played around with time, and it was almost seen as this, crazy. It was this. It seemed like a very genuine tactic. What's up?
And also, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
But episode 7 is an amazing episode because you find out the really dark secrets about Thomas Yates and Frank Underwood.
Yes,
they open up to one another, which really is used against him at the end of the season.
Yeah. That was one of the true guard down, letting guard down episodes there, and especially the chemistry the two of them had.
Yeah,
and it was painfully really present of just how the two of them really understand each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's articulated that Thomas Yates didn't write his first novel, and which is to me was the biggest revelation about that episode, because
and about his character too.
Yeah, about his character also, because we've seen this in real life where authors plagiarize works and straight up take credit for works that they have not written, which I thought was a great it was great seeing that being applied to the season, and also it's articulated that Frank felt like he finally opens up that he felt that Claire deserved better, and he didn't deserve to marry Claire.
Yeah, and it was that was true, and I guess and the real climax, the real big point of the Frank and Claire riff is that really just like that when she forces Frank to take advantage of her and have sex with him, and it's just like really just like for real, because like the first time we see them have sex for the first time, and just like such a rare, it felt like a rare moment.
It was a rare moment, but it was so transactional. Yeah, it was just like I'm gonna have sex with you so you can go on with your day and do your job,
and do what we need to get done.
Yeah, there was no love in that.
There was no love, and then when she tried to get love towards the end of that, that became.
But it was the same thing. It was just like I'm so repulsed with you. I'm frustrated. Have sex with me. And ravage me like you're some rapist. Not like make love to me like you're my husband, but like fuck me like.
And then when she forced him to look at her, she's like, "That's what I thought."
Yeah, exactly.
Because that. And so just because of who those people are, and it just shows us how that whole marriage, while there was some love there, it's almost like transactional love.
It's transactional love.
It's transactional business love. So I thought. And that whole arc, and then the whole Frank and Claire arc really, came to a halt towards the end when she, when Frank is forcing her, trying to put her in her place, and Claire just can't have any more. And that scene, when she's giving blood, and she has that sort of, that mental revelation of how she should have jumped off this bridge, that was really it right there. That was really it, and Thomas Yates was there for it.
He pulled that out of her.
He pulled it out of her. Again. These outside forces breaking into this foundation, which I think which really felt like a theme of that whole season.
Yes, yeah.
Which is really an example of the theme. So we're coming on our usual length, so I'll wrap this up.
But we do want to talk about.
I do, yeah. Definitely. I do want to get back to the other how the Doug thing. I want to get to that real quick. So, before we get back to the true end of Frank and Claire. Let's go back to the Doug. Now, this was some of your problems, and this is when you had some.
Oh yeah, this is when the writing gets really murky.
Yeah, so this is one of the flaws. One of the I guess the bad things about this season is part of the conclusion of the Doug and Rachel storyline. First, we're meant to believe that she's dead, and then Doug is supposed to just move on. But then he doesn't, because for some reason, after Gavin... Yeah, and the deal was that, Gavin has to find Rachel for Doug, and then in exchange, Gavin gets his passport lifted so he can finally flee the country, because he's a cyber criminal.
Yeah, cyber criminal.
Yeah, and then, when Gavin finally gets away, he calls back Doug and tells him that Rachel isn't dead, and he lied, and... basically told him to go fuck himself, but... Yeah.
Because what possessed him to do that? He was in the clear. He was in South America living the life. As far as Doug Stamper knew, she was dead, and he's a free man. The FBI couldn't extradite him. They had no power to extradite him, and Doug was not going to help the FBI until Gavin called and taunted him and was like, "Yeah, she's alive." Now, from a writing standpoint, that's not logical.
No.
Why would you... Look, I felt like that was... I felt like the writers was like, "Hey, man, you know what? We should..."
It was like they really wanted to have... They felt they needed to have the closure between Doug and Rachel. They just didn't quite...
It was so
understand
sloppy.
How to get there.
It was so sloppy. It was just like, hey, guys, this is no, like this character is not motivated to let this information. He has no motivation to help Doug in any way. But you know what? He's gonna do something uncharacteristic. Call Doug Stamper up. Tell him that this person that can blow the entire Underwood campaign administration under is still alive. And yeah,
I bet you it was a conscience thing on Gavin's part.
I don't think it wasn't a conscious thing because he didn't want. It wasn't a conscious thing because even Rachel's lover, he felt bad about lying to her. So it wasn't a conscious thing. So it was completely uncharacteristic.
That was kind of hard.
It felt like the writers did that to just move the story along to get to the ending to
get to the ending that we can go to now. That we'll go to now is that Rachel has been in where was she? Like New Orleans, or she's
in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That's what. I'm sorry. Yeah, she's been in New Mexico, right? You know, she has like a normal life. She's working at a bar, and then she's finally kidnapped by Doug one night after work.
But prior to she's kidnapped, she finally gets documentation.
She finally gets documentation
to change her identity.
Yeah, to change her identity too. So we're seeing that Rachel's finally in the clear of starting a new life, and then Doug finally gets her hand on her, and that whole last scenes, or whatever, or just the last arc of that final episode between Doug and Rachel, it was really like the final line that Doug had to cross to truly solidify himself as part of the Underwoods, because that was always that was always the gaping hole that needed to be filled. And we thought he was let go. We thought he was going to let her go. We got the swerve. Kills her. Very cinematically buries her.
I love how she after this very.
It was all done like a bunch of quick cuts too.
Yeah, it was done. Like the power of editing is so pronounced in this segment. They're pleading. They're pleading. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
She's pleading with She's pleading with Doug not to kill her. Mm. She finally tells him, "Hey, in my back pocket, these are documentations that I'm a new person, and you have nothing to worry about." And Doug, he's conflicted. He's just like, should I kill her? Because Doug is actually in love with Rachel. He's actually in love with her.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, Doug's digging this grave. He has to bleach. He has to lie. He has to shovel. She's dead to rights. And then he gives her water. He lets her go, and he tells her, "Hey, 20 miles from this location, there's a town."
Yeah.
And then she's walking and walking, and then Doug is driving in the opposite direction, and he just stops and turns. And in the car, the van is driving up. And she hears the van is coming, and she turns. And then smash cut
to her head.
Her hair.
Yeah.
Her hair is in a shallow grave in dirt.
And Dirt is going into her. It's like, okay, damn,
she's dead.
She is dead. Finally, he finally got rid of that demon. And just chillingly and gruesomely.
Yeah, and it was gruesome. I do agree because the power of implied violence is you didn't see her. You didn't see Doug kill her. You see the bristle of hair in the shallow grave, and you're like, "Oh my god, he really fucking killed her."
Yeah.
In your imagination is.
Hang on, one second. People will be right. Give us 1 second here. Okay, so we're just gonna finish up here. That was just really the implied violence there was kind of tough to watch, but granted, hopefully we didn't have to see too much of that. So,
but our imaginations just assumed
our imaginations made it a lot worse than what was actually shown. So, kudos to them. And then the ending of the A storyline, Frank gets a new use for Thomas Yates as he really wants to run now, and now he wants to give the story of this campaign. So now Yates is still in the picture going into season 4 now. So Yates has really made an impression on Underwood here. And Claire, she has finally decided to up and leave him. And that is how we end season 3. It's just, Claire walking out of the White House, not going to the limo, not going to New Hampshire, walking away, Frank calls for Claire. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I loved, and one standout scene, him spitting, the scene where Frank spits on Jesus Christ early on. That was just, oh man,
It was two scenes like that.
Yeah.
He pisses on his father's grave.
Yes, but he pisses on his father's grave and he just does a spit. Love, that's what you're selling? Well, I don't buy it. And then, sorry, that was just a standout scene and just really set the tone for what the whole season was like. So, really dug this season. I liked the different approach to the arc in the storytelling as it really built more to a long sort of crescendo, and then kind of a very sudden like ending, but a game changing one.
Yes.
So I thought season 3 was awesome, and I'm glad it's staying on. It's the end does not seem to be near, so it's gonna deviate from the British version. So I'm curious to see how this ends up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how this ends up. So Marvin, thank you so much for joining me on our House of Cards season 3 wrap up. We will be doing. I guess the next one we'll do the Mad Men season premiere when that shows up. Well, I think we can talk about the Mad Men season premiere. We can talk about the Game of Thrones season premiere. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the MTW podcast, our first TV review, and we are out.